All right, hello and welcome to Saint Jawn's studio. I'm Tombo. This is Tombo Talks, and here with me is Crosby. Crosby has been doing urbex for approximately the last 5 years. How did you get into the hobby?
I mean, like originally I was in a city, like there's a lot to do there. Every single day my guys and I would leave school, screw around the city, go on the subway, just kind of see what was going on in a certain neighborhood and go back. But then eventually my family moved to the suburbs in a different city, and like there wasn't as much to do there. Like if you wanted to go anywhere, you basically had to use a car, and 14-year-old me wasn't able to get around. So like this was around like the height of Uber. So like the amount of Uber rides I was calling, I'm pretty sure I spammed Uber's systems to that point. But sure enough, one day was going on YouTube, and this was around the time where like Nightscape, Usama Llama were getting big out in the UK,
Okay, yeah.
and they were doing like the crane climbs and everything, and then like on the roofs was also big as well. They did the Shanghai Tower
Wow.
a few years prior to that. So they were going all over the world just climbing, and it was kind of like a rabbit hole, where like you get so inspired by it, you start doing things slowly. So originally it was parking garages, then it was roof decks, and then eventually like I just saw myself actually getting into the roofs itself. So like I was originally just like a roofer guy, rooftopping guy, and like I guess going on Instagram, you start following more and more people, and you kind of see the pictures as well. That's a huge thing. You see the pictures, you feel like you can emulate it or get like something even better. And I also feel like there's a bit of like a bragging thing involved to it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like it just it started so slowly, and it started so slowly, but I saw myself getting into it so quickly at the same time.
I kind
Uh,
of know that feeling. Yeah, it was you were moving, but it wasn't going quite as fast as you wanted to, and it was almost like it was going in slow motion, kind of thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It was one of those things where, like, you like actually in reality were doing a lot, but like in your mind you're like, oh, it was never enough. Like I need to get this spot next, and you get that spot next. And especially when there's like new mediums of exploring as well. Like I didn't even know much about like the bando exploring until like the proper people showed up on my feed.
Yeah.
And then especially like where I was at, like bando exploring was the norm there. Like it was kind of more of a rite of passage. Like roofs were only so good there. I mean, it was other cities where like the roof topping scene was really up there. Um, so like I was kind of doing like a bunch of mediums as well. Like getting into like certain like abandoned places, abandoned schools, abandoned churches. What else? Abandoned morgues as well. Been to a few.
I always liked how creepy a morgue looked.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think anything related to like death, like the religious places, or like the crematorium as well, just kind of had a bit of an eerie feeling to it.
You knew that's kind of where it all ended. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what? I hate this question when people ask it to me, but I always find it's interesting when I hear other people answer it. Since you brought up mediums, what do you like better, the bando exploring, the rooftops? Is there? For me, it was always a psychiatric hospital. That completely that way of life is done with. Thankfully, society no longer feels that way, no longer views people that way, no longer treats people that way. Is there a particular aspect, a medium that you prefer over the others? Is there like what kind of draws you to that?
I mean, like I guess it depends on like certain time in my life. So like it used to be roofs like all the way back when. So like I wouldn't necessarily care too much about the bandos. I mean, bandos are a whole nother creature within itself to tackle.
They are.
They're much harder to find. It's much more of like collaborating with other people, especially if you're not from the area, because they have the time to go around and scout everything out and be able to like find the entryways in. But if you're visiting a city for a couple of days, you don't necessarily have that privilege.
Exactly.
So you kind of rely on other people to help you. Compared to roofs, you can kind of use Google Maps to your advantage, pinpoint where the roofs are, and then just try your luck with them. I know some cities are much harder than others.
I bet.
Yeah. Like it used to be like for like some cities you would just like the only thing you'd have to worry about is going past the lobby, and then you go up the stairs or you trail someone in the elevator, go up a couple stories, and then like get to the roof, and hopefully there's nothing there, it was just unlocked. But then like over the years like security has kind of found out about this whole hobby. So they start locking the doors, locking the hatches, installing cameras, installing alarms, sensors, also grates for hatches as well. That was something I didn't even know about as well. But I was talking to a kid from Europe. He was telling me that like you could get the hatch open, but the thing is that you had to get the grate out of the way, which deters people from actually going onto the roof.
That's insane.
Yeah.
I know, and this is going back a couple years, but up in Massachusetts, they'll actually have a sensor. My one friend, he was actually just observant enough. It wasn't exactly like a big, bulky thing, but it was just enough if you knew what to look for. And he aborted it while somebody went in right after him. Of course, a lot of cars came driving down the road, picked him up. There's in terms of what they're doing, stepping up security, trying to get people, deter people. There's a brewery that I've done probably at least twice a year for every year since 2015, and they were supposed to redevelop it, but they're demolishing in stages. And a friend of mine from Baltimore actually went up to visit, and they had a Ring camera inside, and they were talking to her like, if you don't leave now, we're going to call the police. It's just like they've never had any interest in that place. The place has been abandoned for like 50 years. Finally,
That's crazy.
It's weird the way that they're getting into that. There would have been I think you would have liked that there. It was a beautiful, beautiful spot.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think for me, I never really did the roofs. It was always going in, and it was always about a couple places I've worked at. They always say, leave your personal life at the door, and then when you leave work, you leave your work life at the door. Separate. So for me, urbex was about leaving life at the door, because you have to be 100% into watching where you are, who you're with, kind of listening. Was that the wind blowing a piece of plastic, or is that somebody scraping their boot on the ground? Are you about to get caught? Do I remember how to get out of this place? Is that a dead end? So yeah, that's God, we could go on for that for hours.
Yeah.
So what based on the time that you've explored, I know that I've kind of had some cross-disciplinary things with other areas of life. As a photographer, you kind of, when you walk into a room, you just start looking, hey, that'd be a really great angle to take a really great photo from. I don't have my camera with me, or those tiles are amazing, or the way that light reflects off of that window is primo. Have you found, as you go through your day, I know you're still in college yet, have you found ways that kind of crosses over into different areas of your life, personally, professionally?
I mean, there's been times where like it's kind of spilled in. Like I unfortunately did have an arrest that happened like a few months ago, and Like it was a very unfortunate thing, mostly because like it could have easily been avoided. We were pushing our limit. This was a roof, weirdly enough, because most of the times I got caught before were bandos, but like the bandos, what I like just got spared at. There was a there was a like high school that was under renovation in my old neighborhood that I did. I would go up 10 minutes. All of a sudden, I basically get swatted by 10 units.
Jesus.
Like 15-year-old me is scared shitless. I'm like, fuck. And like they keep on asking me like, where's your ID? Where's your ID? What's your social security? I'm like, I don't fucking know that. I don't even have that. Like, well, I can't answer that question. I mean, miraculously enough, my friend's parent came and like got me out of the situation, but that kind of struck a chord with me.
Yeah.
But like it's just weird, like when like you're at school or when you're working, like it's like the main thing on the top of your minds, because you'd rather think about that than, oh, like dealing with this stupid assignment or this uh demanding boss that's like asking you to get like even more done in a shorter period of time.
I know that all too
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. So like there's been times where I guess like it's kind of lived in my head rent free. Um but like the thing that like really got me was like after that arrest that had happened, like I think the thing that was worse was just more of like the legal repercussions. So my family was like they didn't really understand like what it was. I was relatively calm about it. I mean, like I knew that I had to go back to New York. That it was more like annoying than anything,
Hmm.
because like already the security guard was a dickhead. Like he snatched my phone away from me. He tried to go on my phone, but my phone turned off before he could even do anything. And like he thought I was there beforehand. Like which I was confused about because I went to that spot, but it was a year prior. But then what I later found out as I was leaving was that there was a group of two guys that had done the place a few weeks prior, and they got chased out
Oh
and
wow.
managed to get away. And I guess one of them looked like me, so they suspected that like I came back
Damn.
to the spot and like tried to do it, and they finally caught me. So they were like, "Oh, like we told you never to come back. Like we're gonna charge you with burglary." And the cop was like originally like on their side, but then like when I told the cop like I hadn't like been to that city in like 3 months, that's when the cops started to question things and like start taking my side and telling security like you got to calm down. Like security like wanted my blood essentially. um
Some of them do get to be pretty overly aggressive.
yeah, like they were definitely power tripping for sure. So like that like kind of set a nerve with me, because usually like I give people benefit of the doubt, and like during that entire time I tried being nice to security. I'm like, hey, like we're just there for pictures, we're not really there to hurt anyone. If I give you $200, you let us go, I promise you will never see me again. And he's like, no. Essentially, I'm like, fuck.
Damn.
And then like cop takes me away. I spend like 2 hours in a holding cell. I thought I was gonna spend the entire night. And like he processes my like stuff and everything, and he's just like, yeah, just come back on this day. Like if you don't come back, there's gonna be a warrant out for your arrest. So like I knew in the past in that city that like the DA was pretty chill about like people trespassing. I mean, it's a pretty big city. The amount of stuff that happens there within like the span of a day, let alone 3 weeks, is kind of
Be it quite a bit.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think like the DA would be overly obsessive with my case. So like sure enough, like I tell my family, and originally they were like, okay, yeah, like we all make mistakes, but then I guess they had one of their friends come over who also didn't really understand much about this hobby and kind of put the fear of God into them as well. So now they're flipping out. They're calling me. They're like, "Oh, like this is much worse than you think. They're gonna like put you in the slammer for a long time and all that." And I'm like, "Listen, nothing's gonna happen." And like, sure enough, they ended up getting recommended this lawyer, and this lawyer was like relatively high status. Like this attorney was involved in like the prosecution of Martha Stewart actually.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and I'm just like I don't need a freaking lawyer for that. Like this is just a trespassing charge. It's not like I'm getting like charged with wire fraud or something.
It's not insider trading.
Yeah, no. I mean, there's like crimes that are a million times worse.
Hmm.
And like especially like at my campus, there's like a lot of like the amount of stuff that happens around there. Like recently, there was like cop that like got shot there. So like now like the city is just like dispatching units around the campus as well. So
Jesus.
like when I think about the graveness of crime, there's so much worse than just like a simple trespassing charge. But I mean, some people don't necessarily understand that. And I mean, I guess like here in the United States, there's a huge emphasis on private property. So like it's definitely weird to have like the exploring culture here out of all places because like you said with the ring cameras, there's more of that going about. There's actually if there's like the Cambridge robotics
Yes.
yeah like they're apparently they're installing like some of those around like major facilities. I mean, it's scaring the crap out of explorers as well, but like
Wow.
once security becomes more automated, like it's gonna really be creepy. I mean, I don't know whether people will adapt to it or whether the hobby will just.
A good friend of mine actually were talking about that. He's out in Connecticut, and this is probably going back maybe a year ago, 8 months ago. So Apple launched this thing where they would check all your photos on your iCloud against child pornography images, which is great. Don't get me wrong. If there's a good way to get to attack child predators, great. But he was talking, it would be really easy for Apple or anybody to tweak that technology. And okay, I'll mention this because it's gone, but Allentown State Hospital, there was a pastel blue stairway and a pastel yellow stairway with this suicide thing. Beautiful photos, beautiful spots. If you're going back to 2020, 2021, you probably saw them a lot on Instagram, Facebook. They were big. It would be really easy for the owner to just upload those images and just check against from different angles and then start digitally going after people. And, him and I were talking about it. We were on the phone for a good 2 hours just talking like, with the way technology is now, it's very possible, but it's still like mind blowing that they could use technology like that to come after us. And if that happens, I just could we deal with it? Could we adapt? I don't know. I mean, you probably have to go after a spot nobody cares about. Get in, do your thing, not be seen, get out, and get away with it that way. I don't think you could do a big spot anymore if they went that way. And hopefully they don't. Who knows? But yeah, I mean that'd be because I remember it was 1996 when I started. I was 14 years old, and typical Rust Belt city. So anything that was great about it was all in the past. Um, literally concrete floors, walls, ceiling. Um, Completely pitch black inside. A little hole where the light came in. Just a good place to hide out, hang out, get away from life. To see how technology. I mean, it's great because you have a smartphone, and even if you forgot your camera because you were at work or whatever, you could always snap a couple shots, shoot at some video. So it got easier that way. but that also makes it a lot easier now to get caught too, which is unfortunate. I'd hate to see the hobby because there's a lot of really passionate people who, thank you, who it would suck to see that kind of dampen. You know, it would really suck. So I met a lot of cool people doing this. You know. Oh, so did you? As far as what was able to cross over, would you find? So there's the legal side, which sucked. You know, great that you got off, but would you find anything like professionally, any kind of crossovers like there?
So yeah, fortunately, like once I started getting more into college, I saw that this was like kind of the time to like get your life together in a way. And it's like I was never exactly the best at school, so I was kind of looking at ways to incorporate what I was currently doing at the time, which was urbex, and like have like a monetary gain to it. Thought about freelancing for a bit with photography and videography. Like I know a lot of people that like originally started off as explorers, but then eventually they started going more on the professional route, and they're doing pretty well for themselves. Um, but it's very difficult at times to get your foot in the door because it's a very competitive field. There's like a variety. There's different types of like photography as well. So like there's the event photography, the people that shoot the concerts. I tried that once, and like it's much harder than you think
Oh yeah.
to get into it because you need the right lighting, and like they move very quickly as well. It's a very dark environment, so you need like a fast shutter, but you need decent lighting as well. But then there's the people that get into real estate, which was the route I took. uh, I ended up finding a brokerage like after my first year, and decided to work for them because I didn't want to spend the summer doing retail.
Yeah, yeah, I could feel you on that
Yeah.
one.
But yeah, essentially, like I got into real estate, and like I took pictures for them, although they were more of the type of brokerage to be like, hey, like we'd rather just have quick photos. We'll do it with our phone. Whether it's actually good or not is kind of debatable. But then like I kind of took in like a different type of photography where like I would use the phone, and the phone is like the new ones are like really good quality, but like sure enough, like it's not the same. So I think they sometimes hire like a professional like photographer who kind of has to get it in perfectly as well, and gets like paid like a substantial amount for like every listing that they do.
It might be just like for their, maybe if they're commercial or industrial or like an expensive residential one that they know they're going to make the money on to pay the guy,
Yeah.
kind of thing. Whereas if you're just doing, you know, some apartments, probably just a quick cell phone shot. Because I know well, God, this is going back 2007. My God, it's going back 2007, and the photographs for apartments were 2 or 3. But then if you're looking at houses, well, hey, you've got like 30 photos to look at, you know, and like they seem to care less about the apartments. Maybe the commission's not as good or whatever, but yeah. So now, was that something that you were able to go into more, or did they kind of peter out because they're going for the quick cell phone shot kind of thing?
They unfortunately kind of petered out. Because like a lot of them are just like, oh, these pictures take forever, and it's like, yeah, because you have to like export them from your SD card.
Yep.
You have to like touch them up a bit. You want to make sure that like they're the best quality. But they're like, no, that takes too much time. So then you just take it with your phone, and I mean it gets results. I don't get me wrong, but it definitely does like take the appeal like out of it for sure. I mean, especially my brokerage works with like a lot more just casual places, like apartments off campus of certain universities as well, where like the standard isn't really too high. You're just trying to market to like college students or uh, maybe like graduate or post grad students. Like these apartments, like you're not necessarily attracting like the average person, so it's like you're kind of able to teeter off more. I know some people that kind of do that like to the limit essentially. I even knew one guy who like took pictures with his phone, but like the angles were horrible. Like he was doing it vertical as well in a room that was meant to be like taken horizontally speaking.
Oh God, yeah.
And they try to market it, but like it's like the most stingy looking listing out there. And it's just more of like, just because it's easy for you to take a picture doesn't mean it's a good picture.
Exactly.
Which is what a lot of people don't really understand about it. Like you have a nice camera and everything, but it still doesn't mean you can take a good picture. But everyone still calls themselves photographers. But like I see like some of the pictures. I knew of someone at my school that is about to graduate. Actually, he's gonna like hand the job to me next year, and like she like claims to be a photographer as well, and like she does have some good works there, but like there's so much that could be significantly improved on it. And every time I see one of those pictures, I just like my first impulse is, all right, what needs to be changed here?
Yep.
All right, maybe tilt it in a certain direction, improve the lighting, improve the sharpness as well. And it's just one of those things that has just been ingrained in me ever since doing like urbex photography, where like it's only like your photography, but when you're dealing with other people's, it's like, all right, yeah, this could be so much better.
True. Yeah.
I mean, it's different when you have someone that has like significantly better photography than yours, and I've seen that before. I'm like, all right, what are they doing that I can change up?
How did you do that? Yes,
Yes.
exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, I had it's 3 different photographers. 2 of them I'm still friends with. One was just an arrogant jerk, but something similar. And this, so when I started off, I couldn't afford a camera. It was literally just a, God, what was that iPhone? Maybe a 2 or 3.
Damn, that long.
Yeah, it was 2015. So whatever, yeah, maybe.
I think it was 6S 2015. The iPhone 5 came out 2012.
Yeah. So that would have been probably 6. Yeah. So anyway, it was a school. We did it with permission. We knew the owner, emailed him, friendly guy, whatever. And I was taking some photos of some chairs, and I posted the one on Facebook, and this one kid hit me up. He's like, scooch down, get yourself about eye level with the chair, and catch that window just behind the chair. All right, whatever. I'll play along. I did, and I looked at the difference. It's like, oh shit. So then I started, when I finished up, I started looking at his profile and some of the ways he was taking pictures. And like you said, you kind of get that, which is what I've always loved about urbex. It was really, it's a collaborative effort. You know, going back to guys I first met, I've learned so much from so many. You know, every photo. Probably definitely the past 5 years, you see hints and bits and traces and pieces of different things that people have taught me or shown me over the years. I still have to break out my tripod. I got this from somebody, from Corey. May or may not be watching, Corey. I still have to break that out and give it a shot. So I want to use this camera to its full potential. Speaking of cameras, what do you shoot with?
I shoot with a Canon Rebel T3i.
Okay. Right.
So it was actually a hand-me-down camera from my parents. They ended up using it pretty often before the rollout of like the smartphone cameras as well. So they carry around a huge hunk of metal and plastic everywhere they go, just like capturing everything, even like us. But then eventually it just started collecting dust. They started using the smartphones more often, and then one day I just decided to pick it up. I'm like, I really want to get into this photography thing. There was a summer where I actually went to Hong Kong. I did a roof there, but I only had my smartphone
Ah,
back then, so like the pictures were pretty like subpar quality, and like considering the view that you have, because like you go to Hong Kong, it's just like buildings like stacked up on to each other. It's like no other place essentially. Um, but like the pictures I got did not do that city justice. And like when I like finally picked up the first camera, like it was a pretty decent camera, although the lens wasn't exactly the best. It had a lot of chromatic aberration on it as well, so like you'd see like purple lines next to certain objects as well.
oh, yeah.
Just so many things that I wish that I knew, but eventually I kind of got into like the whole like collecting different lenses. So I got a 17 through 40. Quality improved significantly. However, because my camera was a crop, it wouldn't necessarily get anything wide angle. And it was when I got into real estate, I realized, oh yeah, you need a wide angle for that, or else you are not getting anything.
There's certain rooms you just have to have, yeah.
Yep. Yep. So like I just invested like my two main or three main actually. I have a zoom lens 75 through 300, so it gets the thing super up close.
Yep.
Because I'm a huge like texture photographer or like close up things. Then I have my standard 17 through 40. That's typically the camera I bring around if I want like a little bit of the best of both worlds. And then there's the 10 through 18, where it just like captures overall landscape, where like the hallway, especially like going into bandos as well, it can like make or break certain pictures.
Absolutely, yeah. So, when I try to, at least on Facebook, when I try to set an album up, that first maybe one or two photos, that kind of sets the mood for it. Let me see, what else? Looking at urbex, is there maybe not regrets, that might be a strong word, but knowing what you know now, going back 5 years ago, would you have done anything differently in terms of? I think my biggest regret was like, actually, I lucked out. Considering what I've heard from other people, I lucked out. I had the guy I went with. We had a great time. We clicked. It was wonderful. It sucked that I didn't have an actual camera, so that would probably be the big regret. But yeah, would there be if you could talk to yourself 5 years ago, would there be anything that you would recommend to do differently as far as getting into it?
Not get overly obsessed with it.
Yeah.
This hobby can easily be your lifestyle. Like I know some people like week in week out they're just exploring every minute that they have. It definitely sounds like ideal for people because they like had to explore more spots. However, sometimes it can like get in the way of certain things. That was like a major reason why I had to like take a step back. I mean, like after my rest, like my family like knew what I was doing, and they're like, "Yeah, you're not doing this again." But once said, like once once an urbexer, always an urbexer. Like you're either you either have always been an urbexer, or like you never were an urbexer.
Like it's in the blood.
Yeah, like just like that like mindset of wanting to find things outside of like your general scope. Because I mean, like most people, they just like look at the streets and that's it. But there's like so much that makes up a city. There's the buildings, there's the underground, the subways, the sewers, and just like seeing like how like a society would run in general. Like us humans are like kind of created to like explore our surroundings in a way that's what makes us curious. But I guess like curiosity can kill the cat sometimes. If you get a little too curious, like you could end up getting arrested. That was like a major thing. Because like I was like overly obsessed with it, but I was also wary of getting arrested, so I was cautious for the longest time. I guess like the biggest thing was to like probably not let this hobby control me. Like definitely grateful for the experiences. Maybe be less nervous to reach out to people as well, especially like you reach out to like one guy and like the guy's a jerk. It kind of gives you a horrible impression
Hmm.
of everybody else. Unfortunately, like I've dealt with like jerks, but I've also met like a lot of good people as well. So I think my two main takeaways was to like be able to like control myself with this hobby and to like also like be less nervous, be able to like go on trips more instead of just worrying about taking L's.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's a big thing that turns off a lot of people. It's like, oh, like if there's a chance we're gonna take L's, then why do it? But that kind of misses out on the whole point of the adventure. You're
Hmm.
there for the adventure, like you don't really care whether you get in or not. It'd be great to get in, but it's not the end all be all.
Yep.
But like some people, like they just won't end up traveling because like they're afraid that they would take L's. It's also a very expensive hobby as well.
Oh yeah.
Camera equipment, attorney fees, as well, medical fees if you end up like getting hurt. So
Oh
it
yeah.
like there's a bit of a love hate relationship with it.
Oh, big time.
Yeah.
I have put so many miles on my car. This is the third, yeah, the third car I've had since getting like into it. He was the second guy I ever contacted, and I won't mention his name because he was an arrogant piece of shit. But it was a rooftop, and I don't even remember the city, but you saw the gravel covering the roof, and then this big fluorescent sign. So I said, just get into photography. How did you capture that video, that photo? And it's beautiful. And it's like, yeah, I know. It's just like, were you born in a trailer park? What do you mean? Yeah, I know. Who does that? Like, so I always tried ever since then to not be that arrogant jerk. Successful or unsuccessful, popular or unpopular. I didn't want to be that guy. Just had to lift a very bad taste in my mouth. Another friend who had an experience with one of the members of the proper people that was sort of the same, not as bad, but he could have been a little more communicative instead of just, oh, that's nice. It's just like, yeah, you might be big, but you've got to look at your fan base too. You kind of that's why you're so big is your fans. Um, I used to, fortunately, we only ever got together once, but there was this guy. He came up here. We went to the Catskills in New York. He had 5 places lined up. Mind you, this was February, March, so our cap when the sun starts going down, we've got a very limited window. Well, we did the 4, great time, awesome photos, probably the best set I've ever had. We missed the 5th. Well, all of a sudden he starts getting cranky. It's just like, if you look at it, I've had days, you were with me on the one, literally every spot we hit was a complete L. We hit 4, we got into 4, we just didn't have the daylight for number 5. And he was getting cranky about it. And it's just, get the hell away from me, so yeah, that's a great piece of advice probably for anybody. Don't get that absorbed into it. Yeah, what's the big one? They call them clout.
Yeah, the
Clout
cloud
chasers.
chasers. Yeah.
That's yeah. You get a lot of that, especially on Instagram. It seems to be the sole what a lot of the meat and potato what people are going for. Well, not everybody, but some people go for on that to get the views. Um, one of the biggest problems I have with Instagram is you'll get followers, you'll follow them back, and then they'll unfollow you. Again, it's about a collaboration thing. In a way, social media has helped. Growing up, I had no idea that there was this thing called urbex. I had no idea it was such a huge community. I had no idea how it touched so many lives. We didn't even have YouTube at the time, you know. So to be able to sit down and talk with and have like 3 4 hour phone conversations with people, it was great getting intel on places, getting to know explorers, and then wait, let's meet up, let's do this, let's do Embryville, let's do Allentown. and then to see some of the clout chasers and then the stab in the back kind of. There are unfortunately probably about a handful of guys I could name off. I won't, that are more trouble than they're worth as far as drama and everything. And it's sad to see the hobby go that way. But then that one function that Max Bud sponsored, I met a ton of cool people there, present company included. That it was refreshing with that to see. Not only were there young people getting into the hobby, but that they were passionate about it for all the right reasons. I don't really see anybody there that was more for the clout. It all just seemed more for the experience, which is awesome. If the hobby does live on, I'd love to see it live on in that vein. Let me see. What what would you say? What would you say you like most about urbex?
Um, that's a trick question. I mean, like, I think for the longest time, like I was more obsessed with the pictures. Didn't fall too much into the clout trap, fortunately. But like even after I got out of the clout trap, I was like very obsessed with getting like the right picture. And like sometimes you spend time being obsessed with the picture, but then eventually like you end up going back to certain places and you realize that you don't really have much pictures to take, but it's more for the memory. I remember the first time we met was at an abandoned paper mill, and weirdly enough, that paper mill I had been countless times, especially during the pandemic when everything was shut down. Like after school, my friends and I would just drive there, like walk the path, and then just like hang around the paper mill for hours on end,
Yep.
until it got dark. And this was before the power all went out because of that flood.
Oh wow.
So like it was just weird seeing everything like stuck in time. It was a huge complex as well. But like it was one of those things where like it can easily bring people together as well. I like am eternally grateful for all the people I met, including yourself. Um, and like it's helped me through like so many like difficult times. Moving to the suburbs, like I said earlier, wasn't the easiest thing, especially coming from a city. The school I went to as well, like the people there were kind of difficult to socialize with, to say the least.
Yeah.
So like it kind of felt like you were an odd person sticking out, and this hobby basically just called me, and like it helped me through so much stuff. Did I get a little too wrapped up to it? Yeah, maybe. I mean, it was like what I said before, but I'm like really grateful for like all the memories, the amount of stories that I have that I can get into
Oh yeah.
as well. As shit as the arrest was, like it's still a story that like I will like continue bringing up until I perish. Um, and like it's one of those things where like someone asks you if you lived, and like for some people they kind of live their life based on what other people want them to, but I think here I kind of lived a bit of the life that I've wanted to live so far. I know getting emotional, but yeah, no, it's definitely like changed my view on life a bit. Just like thinking about like the main thing that sticks with you at the end of the day is like your memories and like the people that you meet. Like no amount of materialism will necessarily make up for it. I think it's taught me how to be less materialistic as well, and like realize that you can have a good time without having too much stuff.
True. There was this is going back probably 2016, and we were in this locker room, and the guy I was with, every once in a while he'll get this. Oh, hey, I wonder what this is for. And we're standing there, and it's just like, could you imagine? It's 11 o'clock. It's Friday night. You're done with your shift. You're hanging up your coat in your locker, and then you're getting your stuff ready. You're going out to have a weekend. It's just like these big old fashioned wooden lockers, and baskets hanging from the ceiling, kind of thing. It's the light was really crappy. Again, I only had a smartphone, so I couldn't get any real photos. But just when you as I'm telling you the story, I can smell the smells. I can recall that room. That dampness. The open window, kind of with the warm air flowing in. Yeah, and it is. It's one of those. Have you lived your life, or have you just has life lived you? And it's refreshing to be able to say, yes, I have lived life. I could tell you that story. As well as the embarrassing ones like getting hypothermia. You know, haven't gotten any legal trouble yet. Hopefully, it stays that way.
Knock on wood.
But like you mentioned with the medical, I did. Very expensive. Wound to the head. Live and learn. So, is there anything about the hobby? Maybe hate's too strong a word, but is there anything? Let me ask you this: if you could change anything about urbex as the community, the culture, what would that be?
I mean, definitely less toxicity for sure. I think there are some arguments I understand, especially like it's good that people are getting into it. I think there are some people that are a little bit inexperienced. So like for the sake of like protecting certain spots and like being able to vet out the vandals to like actual explorers. Um, like definitely be able to like vet out like appropriately who like is there for exploring, who's there to like wreak havoc. However, unfortunately, there's the polar opposite. The people who like overly gatekeep everything.
Mm-hmm.
There's unfortunately been like some explorers out there that will lock places from the general like community just so that they can keep it for themselves. So like
Wow.
I kind of understand like both arguments, but it's unfortunately become so toxic to the point where like people kind of overly obsess about it. And like I can see why people would like the amount of memories that you get out of it, the pictures as well. um I mean, I was told this by like an explorer. The thing that differentiates the boys from the men is that the men are just there to like live in the moment, have a good time, compared to the boys. Like they have to like gatekeep the spot.
Yep.
They have to like be there for the perfect picture
I love this.
as
I love
well.
that.
Yeah. And then of course there's the babies, which are just the vandals, the scrappers, the graffiti artists that kind of mess up certain locations as well. That's the main thing. Like the amount of stories I heard, like there's been cases of people being doxxed, people being reported to the authorities by their explorers because they had a little falling out as well. There was even, I think there was one case that recently got big. It was out in Connecticut. They were doing, there was like a group of explorers doing asylum, and then all of a sudden a guy like comes out and like shoots one of the explorers, and apparently there was like beef between the two.
Oh
I don't know
shit.
whether they ever found the guy, but just like learning about that, I'm like, people really need to grow up.
Yeah.
Like I understand that like you want to protect a spot, but like at the end of the day, this is only a like fraction of your life. Like
Yeah.
it's not your entire thing. Like in 5 years, like you'll have good memories, but it won't necessarily matter. Like your life doesn't necessarily change uh, or anything. So I think it's just more of being able to not overly gatekeep, but also be able to like find the people who are truly passionate about it and have them be able to explore while also keeping out like the vandals and all that. I know it sounds like very counterintuitive.
No, I've actually a handful of people I know, especially from like Pittsburgh. If they do tell you, it's because they've seen your work. They know that you're reliable. Um, One guy, I think, Christ, we must have talked for hours a day for a good 2 3 weeks, and we actually went down to DC and hit up a couple places. That was pretty cool, but unfortunately, not everybody has the same luck, and there are people who will put on a good front to get in and still vandalize. Luckily, I haven't met anybody like that, but you do hear stories. Yeah, I think if we could strike that balance, I think it'd be beautiful if we could do that. You know, it's unfortunate when you do come in, especially to the gatekeepers like that. Some of them get very almost childish. Speaking of that one, this is right when Facebook first launched that live feature. I believe it was Philly. Might have been Trenton. Either way, she was on her Facebook. She was live streaming. Somebody'd seen it, called the local cops, and they actually busted her while she was on her live. It's just like, was that really necessary? And it wasn't a nice place. This wasn't something like Norristown right before they demolished the old section. It wasn't anything like that. I mean, this place was covered with graffiti. This place was trash. Like, why? Why would you go out of your way to protect that? Like, there's not much there to protect. I, I don't know. Yeah, yeah. So, is there overall? Would you say then that based on everything, sort of urbex has been more of a, I guess, more of a boon, more of a plus, more of a asset to you?
I guess it depends on what aspect. Um, I think when it comes to having stories, we already know the answer to that.
Oh yeah.
Um, but I think in terms of other things, like personal development, like it's a fun hobby, but it's a stupid hobby. Yeah,
Yeah.
like I love this hobby with all my heart. But it's like there's so many risks that get involved to it as well, and it's very easy to get obsessed with it that like you kind of put off other things in your life, and that's kind of
Yeah.
when you realize that you need to like put like urbex to the side and just focus on like improving yourself before you can get back into it. I know a lot of people that have taken long hiatuses from it just so that they can get things in their lives sorted out. Whether it's to have like a stable income, whether it's to like be able to like do well in school, work, or whether it's just like more of them like finding other hobbies and then eventually like coming back to it. There's a lot of people that have kind of gotten like into it and then gotten out and then gotten back into it and then gotten out and maybe does some like from time to time, especially like when you have like other priorities to think about. You kind of have to put it to the side and think about that. So I mean, I think now looking back, I'm like, okay, this was a good hobby, but I really can't be like focusing too much on it. I need to focus on other things.
True. Yeah. Yeah, but looking back, I think so. My biggest thing was equipment. Like you said before, this is a very capital intensive hobby, very expensive hobby. Um, I've always kind of had that interest in sort of what was on the other side of that fence, what used to go on in there. So that was always there. it wasn't until 2015 that I saw that other people were doing this, that they were taking photos, and that those photos looked really good. And that was kind of what got me into, maybe I should, check out this iPhone camera, see what it can do. And it's, I lost my train of thought. What was I talking about?
You were talking about like your approach to the hobby.
Ah, right, right. Thank you. Yes. Um, so I knew that I wanted to capture things. I wanted to kind of see sort of. I don't want to say that a video or a photo can do a place's history justice. Bedhead and I were actually just talking about this. He asked if I'd ever seen Byberry. Unfortunately, I missed that. I was in college at the time. Trying in some way to keep my priorities straight. Yes, I did pass. I did really good that year. That paper really got me those points. But I miss Byberry. And I believe it's his mother's grandmother. She knew that something wasn't right, so she had herself committed. I'm not sure if it's because of budget cuts. I know that was a big problem at Forest Haven. They didn't have any clothing. So here's this poor woman, dead of winter, stark naked, and I don't know if it's the window was broken or if these were just like a Fernald State School where they were just really sadistic and they opened it to freeze her out. But you hear a lot of stories about that at a Byberry. Patients literally, they're in their rooms and they're frozen. That they die of hypothermia. Even though neither of us had gotten to see Byberry, neither of us got to take photos. Maybe we'll watch a documentary. Maybe he's done a ton of research on that place. It's really cool to talk to him about it. We always end up talking for like 2-3 hours, but just the name, going through a list of names and that comes up, and the lengthy conversation we could have about that was always really cool. And while I know that no photo could do a place like that justice, I know, like in one of my first videos, I mentioned Overbrook, and I literally got 6 different text messages, and somebody called me up, and we talked for 3 hours. You mentioned Overbrook, did I tell you? And then we got into story. So it was literally, even though it was, I'd visited in 2015, 2016. I think in 2017 is when they started knocking everything down, and by 2018, it was townhouses, development. Um, so just going that far back, and still people have those fresh stories or those fresh. The one kid emailed me some videos he took. He was like from 2007, 2008 when it first opened up, and he was one of the first people to get in. I mean, this place is beautiful. Not even any peeling paint. It was that fresh. But yeah, just not so much to be able to keep those memories alive. While the intention of the psychiatric hospital was supposed to be a good one, a lot of time those budget cuts took away from that. And then, of course, you're in a position like that. So there was a guy, a janitor at Embryville, that would sexually assault patients, and they couldn't afford to get rid of him because they couldn't find anybody else. So they were moving him around ward to ward to ward to ward, knowing that they were transferring this sexual predator around. It's just like, ouch. And then today, you fast forward to today, well, we don't do that, and well, that's kind of why we don't do that anymore. We're a little more proactive with that. So I suppose if there was any good to come out of the psychiatric hospital, it's that we just don't do that anymore, which is the best lesson to gain from that. Let me see. I can't think of anything else. Is there anything just from a
Like in terms of stories,
yeah? What do you got for us?
I mean, like I don't even know where to begin with that. I mean, I did explore the mansion, and thing about that mansion is that like it had a very interesting backstory to it. It was owned by like these millionaire billionaire guys. that were on the Titanic, and they ended up passing away due to it sinking. But then, like after that, the mansion had like sat in decay for decades on ends, almost a century. And like there's still artifacts there as well. So just going into every room, you kind of imagine what like each of those artifacts held in place.
And the stories that they would
Yep.
have told,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That I mean that's like a main like thing I'm grateful about is just kind of appreciating history more. I mean like I know that like some places had like more screwed up history like the Embryville hospital. But I think like overall you kind of learn a bit more of like how we functioned way back when. Um, like I look at stuff in Europe and like that stuff goes back centuries ago, but it's still there abandoned. I mean, fortunately, like the Europeans have done better of like preserving historical monuments and landmarks and being able to like give people the exploration experience without actually like me like trespassing.
Yeah, I kind of, what was it, Penhurst. And I've always admired the way that Penhurst did it. And I know that they caught a lot of, the Paracon, they caught a lot of grief from it, but opening up that haunted house at the psychiatric. But then if you think about it, well, they've bought the state school, they bought the buildings, they bought the land, so that's property taxes, that's any of the rent, because the state didn't do anything to keep Penhurst at all. So they were occupied buildings with leaking roofs, you know. And, you know, so just to get the three buildings that they had open, to get them to be like legal, to be safe, that was expensive in and of itself. Plus, you've got the property tax. Plus, you've got the school tax. Plus, you've got, well, now we've got to make this ADA compliant for the parking lot, for access to the building. So the only way you could make money was to sell the scary part. So haunted house, you know. But then people say, well, that's disrespectful to the history of the past. Well, they have the history tour. They had the photography tours, but in order to make all of that affordable, you have to figure out another way to sort of make money off of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, state sold it. The state's not going to help you out. You know, so it's nice to see them do that. It's nice to see what they finally did, going back to Eastern State Penitentiary. Um, God, when did I do that? That was 2017, 18. Grace and Rose and I went there, and that was awesome. And they were in the middle of doing, where the hallways met up. There was this beautiful ceiling, and they were redoing all the woodwork in because they just, that was something that again decades has sat there abandoned. You know, it was a famous Philadelphia spot for graffiti and for urbex for decades, and then you know they bought it and they started fixing it up. It's another nice thing to see. You know, it's trying to strike that perfect balance to keep those places both historically relevant and commercially viable, so that you're not, you know, hemorrhaging money. You know, another thing going back to Bedhead was, if you think about it, he said, you know, we have the best hobby in the world. We go to museum-like places without the experience, without the charge, the entry fee, or the long lines. You know, you get to experience a little bit more of a personal history. You know, that paper mill. You know, those, that control panel. Somebody used that to operate a machine and roll, you know, 5 tons of paper. You know, that was kind of neat. That control room, where that logbook was, that was pretty neat. You know, it's sort of history on a macro scale instead of on a micro scale, and that, you know, going back to how cities work and how people, you know, societies work, that was really awesome to see too. You know, the bits and pieces you get from those explorers, and it's probably, for me, that's probably the best part about the hobby. You know, not so much the clout. Um, I find, especially since I've gone to the Canon 70D, I find that I'm getting a little bit more into watching other photographers. Like when you walked into a room at the paper mill, you were scanning that. You were looking for different angles and everything, and you could see this the gears spinning, like you were looking for that perfect shot. And like you're looking at that, and then looking at the room, and figuring out myself different ways to maybe shoot a little bit more of a cinematic video or a better photo, or what more to focus on, and then getting a lot of help from photographers who do Adobe, editing shots. There's a lot of collaborations have been not so much recently, but back in the pandemic, there was a guy that was helping me out a lot, and that's been pretty cool too. It's probably the best if you're with the right people. It's probably the best thing to say about this community is it's very inclusive and very collaborative. I really do wish that we could see more of that instead of the doxing, instead of the like you were saying, the very. I know that Long Island, for example, is a very toxic community. That's incredibly cutthroat, and I don't really get why because I haven't seen anything too special out in Long Island. Like, it would be one thing if you had a great gilded mansion that was preserved for 90 years. That I could understand, but I'm not seeing any evidence of that. I guess it's just boredom. I guess just some people love misery. Misery love company. But yeah, that's. Oh my God, we've gone over the 45 minutes. Well, there's the first dialogue here out of Saint Jawn Studios. If you've watched the entire time, I'd like to give special thanks to Crosby for coming all the way up. That was an awesome interview. I blown away. I was, yeah, yeah, and you hit on all the great points. But fucking a man.
Yeah.
Um,
It's good talking to you as always.
definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
So until next time, I'll be signing out, and we'll see you later.